Mr. Horton's dedicated his life to fighting for us workers.
This epidemic is decimating our nation.
I was given a sneak peek at Coup, which will be in theaters next month and then probably streaming shortly after that. I'll start by saying this is a horrible title. It does not convey what the movie is about. Well, it kind of does, but not in a very clear and compelling manner, in my opinion. It should be called Flu because it takes place during the 1918 influenza epidemic, which actually feels pretty familiar. People wearing masks, restaurant closures, suspension of public services. This was a pretty big deal when it was happening, but I guess it was somewhat swept under the rug because Billy Magnuson plays a rich vegetarian journalist named Jay Horton, who writes these scathing newspaper editorials shaming the U.S. president for not protecting the, quote, working man during this terrifying Spanish flu pandemic. For some reason, Horton hires a mustachioed Peter Sarsgaard as his new family chef to make them vegetarian meals, but the chef is, of course, sketchy, selfish, and entitled, and so a power struggle between the two men ensues, with the chef eventually leading the other two house servants on a somewhat minor rebellion, which I suppose you could call a coup, but not really. This was an okay movie. It's very eerie to realize that just over a century ago, people went through almost the exact same kind of public health restrictions that we have all recently experienced. It doesn't seem like we learned a lot from the experience though, but it does create an interesting setting for this scenario. The performances are good, particularly Sarah Gadon as Mrs. Horton. She plays a very progressive woman, which is pretty common for the time, just a few years before women got the vote in the US. But I found the other characters to be not as believable, and the story loses steam with a kind of a ridiculous pseudo love affair thing. The ending is unsatisfying though, and other than one very obviously presented character change, I find myself wondering what it was all about. Check out Coup if the story sounds interesting to you, but I'd also just as soon skip this one. You could probably find something better to watch. See you at the movies.